Hello and welcome to Alex Toth In Depth. This is Paul Fricke, cartoonist, comics professor, and Toth Sato. This is the program where we discuss Toth's work and influence on comics, character design, and visual storytelling. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube or to the podcast. Positive reviews really help. Check show notes for links. For daily Toth art posts on Instagram, follow at Alex Toth In Depth, and please spread the word. In this episode, introducing a new episode format, Anatomy of a Page. In this series, I'm going to cover certain particular pages that Toth drew and study and analyze and break down many aspects of a page. This in particular is from the first Torpedo 1936 story that Toth did, page 7. Toth did two Torpedo 1936 stories in 1981 for an Italian publisher, these both written by Sanchez Abuli. And this is a gangster story set in America featuring Torpedo or Luca. And you can see Toth brought his signature style to this work. So no matter what Toth did and however many strengths he had, and however strong he was on design, everything he did almost always in service of story. Now, what did he do in particular with this story? He uses for the layout a 6-panel grid. This page is largely dealing with scene transitions from outdoor to indoor and character interactions between the two main characters, Luca and Rascal. And he focuses on a particular center of interest that's pivotal to the story. You'll see on this page that he is not showing a full figure and he's not showing any close-ups. On previous pages and subsequent page, he is dealing with more of those kinds of shots and establishing that further. But because we're seeing emotions and close-ups on the page before and the page after, he's not focusing on that as much and isn't really needed for page 7. So back to storytelling. Again, the 6-panel grid. And what does he do on this page? On the first half of the page, the first 3 panels, he is focusing on that transition, the character's movement, and establishing the interaction between them and how they are relating to each other physically. And then in the second half of the page, he is focusing on a suitcase. And again, this is pivotal to the story. What's the point of view of each one of these shots in terms of story and traditional storytelling? In panel 1, it's an exterior, just below eye level. Same for panel 2, but the interior. Panel 3, over the shoulder, just above heads where people are sitting. Low angle for panel 4, over the shoulder, and slightly above eye level for panel 5. And then a worm's eye view, or from extreme below, for panel 6. There's a reason for each one of these shots and why he's doing it, and we'll explore further. For balloon and text placement on this page, he keeps it very simple, very similar to the simple setup of the 6-panel grid. When you do this, there's no way somebody's going to read this incorrectly. One panel follows another, and in this case, all the balloons are positioned at the top of the page. There's no way you can read this incorrectly or in the wrong order. Very solid, very traditional. What's the flow, the eye flow of the page? Now, who knows how a reader really takes in the information and where their eye goes? More likely than not, readers are taking in a variety of things, the page all at once. Their eyes are darting about the page. They're bouncing back and forth between word and image. And in many cases, they're going to read the text first and then go through the flow of the images. But that's not always the case. Many times I think people are reading the images really quickly, even quicker than they think, and then going to the text. In this case, generally, he will bring the eye from left to right, top to bottom, and across the panel. Often you'll see panels go in 7 or Z shapes, and we've got some of that going on here, but he brings the eye down and then across the panel in panel 2, down around, and then the positioning of the characters in panel 3 brings us across, along with the characters' sitting legs, and then a strong vertical down with an arm in panel 4, bringing us down to the suitcase, across, sweeping across in panel 5, and then in panel 6, straight left to right, some verticals, but then off to the next page as well. Really good flow throughout this whole page. In terms of fields of depth, Toth is using a variety of things to show foreground, middle ground, and background. And I've indicated them if you're watching here on the video. In some cases, he's using foreground elements to frame the more important element within the panel, or just for depth. And in other cases, the foreground element is the most important thing in the panel, like in panel 6 or in panel 4, or is in tandem, like in panel 6, with the main character, Luca. He is using sometimes black to establish foreground and background, and in some cases he's overlapping shapes, figures, and objects to establish further depth. Sometimes there's black in the background, sometimes in the foreground, and sometimes he leaves background out entirely to really get us to the most important part of the panel. But incredible depth throughout here, and Toth did a great job of that his entire career, establishing depth within his picture making in his panels. Toth is really known for black spotting, and in this case, it is not a page that stands out with really stark, over-the-top black spotting like he can do, but it is very strong and used well throughout. In this case and on this page, he's using it in the background in ways that wouldn't always be used. Sometimes those background blacks are popping characters out into the foreground. And then in panels 3 and 6, he's got an interior wall behind Luca that is completely blacked out. I think most people and most artists, when dealing with this and considering the lighting within the space, the interior space, I don't think they would black that out. And he does, in order to reduce clutter and in order to get the focus on the main character and his body language and expressions and interactions. Composition, framing, and center of interest. These are very important within this page. He's using diagonals, framing, and directional pointers to get across where he wants you to look and what is the center of interest in each panel. In panel 1, we are looking at the head, but that is kind of overlapped from his collar. The real important center of interest is the bottle he's holding. The most important thing is that Luca's been drinking. It's the morning, and he is off kilter and askew, which you can see from the diagonals. The diagonals point us from his head down to the bottle that his hand is holding, and then across and into the next panel. The center of interest in panel 2 is Luca's face, and again, his body language. All of the pointers are there to, from previous panels or within the panel, are really directly like arrows pointing us to the main thing we want to see. And in panel 2 as well, he's using Rascal and the foreground to frame Luca, the center of interest. In panel 3, there are vertical and diagonal pointers and diagonal framing with, again, Rascal and the end table, bringing us to the center of interest of Luca. In panel 4, We have some strong verticals and diagonals from Luca's legs that are pointing to the suitcase in this panel, the obvious center of interest. And other verticals are pointing in Rascal's body and framing the suitcase as well. Pay close attention to Toth's cropping in all the way throughout his work. He uses cropping to sometimes not give you the full picture, to direct and focus your eye to something important. If we saw a full figure of either Rascal or Luca in panel 4, we would not be as aware of the suitcase, which again, at this point, becomes the main item and object in this page and leading into the next page. Same thing in panel 5. There are framing and pointers from Luca's body and a vertical pointer of Rascal's body to get us down to the suitcase. Again, the suitcase is front and center, and even though overlapped by Luca's leg, is the main center of interest. And then diagonals pointing from Luca's body to the suitcase. In this case, you can say the suitcase is the center of interest, but it is also framing Luca's body language and reaction to what Rascal wants to show him in the suitcase or the action that's been taken. Body language, expression, and clothing folds. Toth can just draw like crazy, and he's not getting lost in a lot of detail, although there's tons of detail in these pages. It's just how he chooses to draw them and how he is choosing to, and what he's choosing to focus on. For these, let's take a closer look at each tier. In panel 1, again, the main thing Toth wants to get across to us is Luca's state, and his body position is telling us that he's off kilter. He needs to, he's on an angle, he's on a diagonal, which again makes for a dynamic composition. And he's steadying himself with his arm on the car. And, you know, the other strong verticals and horizontals accentuate how askew Luca is in this panel. We get a lot of movement just from the figure, but also from the sweep of the scarf from over his shoulder. In panel 2, we're seeing more of that, with Luca just being off kilter, askew, taking his coat off in a wild manner because he doesn't have super control of himself. There is a bottle in the foreground to remind us. He set it down, and that is, you know, why he's in that state. Also, look at the upper left, if you're viewing the video here, that lamp is askew as well, with further frames Luca, but also accentuates that he's off kilter. Again, his body language is juxtaposed with Rascal's in that panel, in panel 2, which is vertical, straight. Rascal is, you know, clear. Luca, not so much. But look at the movement on his layered clothing here. Drawing someone putting on or taking off a coat or a shirt is really difficult to draw, and Toth observes this and pulls it off great. Tons of movement again. The hat is askew. There's a sweep of the scarf of his coat, and then a lot of movement right from the tie. Just beautiful stuff. And again, because Luca's head is pointed down and we're not seeing it full on, we are looking instead at the body language and all the clothing that is getting across what Toth wants to see, and then Rascal's reaction to it. In panel 3, Rascal is framing Luca, which is the center of attention here. And again, if we saw a straight-on shot of Luca's face, we would be paying attention to his expression, and we're getting some of that. The body language, though, is what's carrying it, and look how natural Luca's sitting position is here. Just beautiful. In panel 4, there's great detail and attention paid to the shoes and the folds in the clothing, whether they're blacked out or have some shadow on it. Just gorgeous, really beautifully drawn. Also, Toth uses pattern and design within his objects. Very true throughout this entire story, pivotal to the entire story. And, he's doing the same thing here with some things on the rug, but again, those strong verticals on the suitcase, which make it very identifiable from panel to panel and really get our attention. And look at the look at the detail of the folds in the rug, right? It's not a clean against the floor rug. It has some give to it, and it's been rumpled. Just beautiful observation. The last two panels, again, Luca's body is framing and pointing us toward the suitcase, but his body language tells us a lot, and that is accentuated in the last panel on this page. Again, we're not seeing Luca's face. It is obscured by the arm of the chair and his own hand. Instead, what we're paying attention to is the body language to get across his mood and emotion and his reaction to the suitcase. Beautiful stuff. One last word about translation on this story. Again, this was for an Italian publisher. So Toth got the script written by Italian writer, and then I'm assuming it was translated for him to draw, and he did not leave the balloons open. Instead, he lettered it himself in English. And we're told he made changes to the script. Now, I can't recall how this was first published in America, in a Catalan publication in 1984. But it's been translated and changed. The script has been changed many times, or a few times anyway, in subsequent printings. If you consider the Italian, what I'm assuming is the original Italian publication on the right here, some of this looks to be different than what Toth did. If you translate this, some of it is very close to what Toth changed it to, and then some of it looks different and perhaps the Abuli's original intention. In subsequent years, this story has been published in other ways, and in some cases they completely change Toth's lettering. For some reason, even reversing out the type in panel 2, but some really bad lettering on certain prints of this, unless someone translated this for themselves. But again, some of the translation is very close to what Toth changed it to, and some of it is more similar to what we see in other versions. On the right here, more harsh language, which perhaps Toth objected to. And I really think you can get like 3 or 4 different versions of translations, or with the Italian, of the text within this story. I prefer a lot of what Toth changed it to, where he strips it down and keeps it simple and takes the edge off a little bit, meaning it's already a misogynistic and harsh story. And some of the other versions to me are overly harsh. Perhaps some think that's an advantage or a benefit, but I like what Toth did. In 1985, I think a year after the original appearance of this story in the Catalan publication, this story was also published in Echoes of Future Past, by Neil Adams Continuity Studios and colored by Corey Adams. And this is very similar to some of the other text of other publications of this story. The coloring here is in some ways definitely handled in terms of warm and cool, but I usually don't care for it. It has a more painterly look, and that to me is at odds with Toth's manner of laying down his line work and his black and white work. For the original, Toth used a red flare pen, best I can figure, He did this red lettering on his original art as early as the 1950s, some of the first lettering jobs he ever did. And again, the camera in those days would pick up red as black. So it really didn't matter which way he was using it. Now this strikes people as odd, but that's what he was about. And again, he did that as early as the 1950s, and then again in his later work sometimes, this one done in 1981. So that wraps our analysis of this page. There are many different pages from this story. I could have chosen almost any page in this story, and it would have been a standout, but this one always stuck out to me, and it's really a winner for a variety of reasons. If you've not read the Torpedo stories, I would check out both of them. Again, if you're looking at Jordi Bernay's work on the rest of the series, it's beautiful stuff, but really harsh stories, so know what you're getting into if you're going to seek them out. But I would check out Toth 2 stories to study them and read them and learn more from them. Really gorgeous stuff, some of his best, and in my estimation, this is one of the best comic short stories ever done. So that's all the time we're giving to this episode. This again is Paul Fricke for the Alex Toth In Depth program. Keep in mind what Toth said. Interpret the story's needs and serve them. Until next time, go with Toth.